Have you ever opened your mailbox to find another official-looking envelope from a government agency? Whether it's tax documents, social security notices, or other correspondence, it's common to wonder, how long should you actually keep these government letters? In this video, we'll break down the types of government letters you might receive, why they matter, and how long you should hold on to each type. We'll also share some practical tips for organizing and safely disposing of these documents when the time is right. Let's get started by understanding why these letters are so important in the first place. Government letters often contain vital information about your taxes, benefits, legal rights, or obligations. These documents can serve as proof of communication, evidence in disputes, or records for future reference. For example, if you ever need to prove your eligibility for a benefit or clarify a tax issue, having the original letter can save you a lot of trouble. That's why it's important to know which documents to keep and for how long. Let's explore the different types of government letters you might receive. Government letters come in many forms. Some of the most common include tax documents like W-2 seconds and 1099s, social security statements, Medicare notices, jury duty summons, and official notifications about benefits or legal matters. Each type of letter may have different retention guidelines, so it's important to identify what you're dealing with before deciding whether to keep or toss it. Next, let's look at tax-related documents and how long you should keep them. Tax documents are among the most important government letters you'll receive. These include W-2 seconds, 1099s, and notices from the IRS or your state tax agency. These documents are crucial for filing your taxes and may be needed if you're ever audited. The IRS generally recommends keeping tax returns and supporting documents for at least 3 years. However, in some cases, you may need to keep them longer. Let's break down the details. According to the IRS, you should keep tax returns and supporting documents for at least 3 years from the date you filed your return or the due date, whichever is later. This is because the IRS has up to 3 years to audit your return. However, if you underreported your income by more than 25%, the IRS can go back 6 years. If you didn't file a return or filed a fraudulent one, there's no time limit, so it's wise to keep your tax records for at least 3 to 7 years, just to be safe. Don't forget about your state tax documents. Each state may have its own rules for how long you should keep tax records. In general, it's a good idea to follow the same guidelines as the IRS, keep your state tax returns and supporting documents for at least 3 to 7 years. If you're unsure, check your state's tax agency website for specific recommendations. Now, let's move on to Social Security and Medicare letters. Social Security letters can include annual statements, benefit award notices, and updates about your account. It's important to keep your benefit award letters for as long as you receive benefits, as they may be needed for verification. Annual statements can be kept until you receive the next one and have confirmed the information is accurate. If you spot any errors, keep the relevant documents until the issue is resolved. Next, let's look at Medicare correspondence. Medicare sends out explanation of benefits, EOB statements, and other notices about your coverage. You should keep EOBs and other Medicare letters for at least 1 year, or until you've verified that all claims have been processed correctly and there are no outstanding issues. If you have ongoing disputes or appeals, keep the related documents until everything is resolved. Now, let's talk about letters related to government benefits. If you receive letters about government benefits like unemployment, SNAP, or housing assistance, keep these documents for as long as you're receiving the benefit. These letters may be needed to prove eligibility or resolve issues. Once you're no longer receiving the benefit and have confirmed there are no outstanding matters, you can safely dispose of them. Let's move on to legal and court-related government letters. Legal letters from government agencies, such as jury duty summons, court notices, or subpoenas, should be kept until the matter is fully resolved. If you're involved in a legal case, keep all related correspondence until the case is closed and any appeals period has passed. For jury duty, you can usually dispose of the letter after you've served or been excused. Next, let's discuss letters related to citizenship and immigration. Letters related to citizenship, visas, or immigration status are extremely important. You should keep these documents permanently, as they may be needed to prove your status or for future applications. Losing these letters can cause significant problems, so store them in a safe place. Now, let's look at military service documents. If you have served in the military, keep all official correspondence, including discharge papers and benefit letters, permanently. These documents are essential for accessing veterans' benefits, proving service, and other legal matters. Losing them can make it difficult to claim benefits or verify your service history. Next, let's talk about property and real estate letters. Government letters related to property ownership, such as deeds, property tax assessments, or zoning notices, should be kept for as long as you own the property. Deeds and other ownership documents should be kept permanently, while tax assessments can be kept for several years after payment. Now, let's look at letters about vehicle ownership. Letters from the DMV or other agencies about vehicle registration, title, or recalls should be kept for as long as you own the vehicle. Once you sell or transfer ownership, you can dispose of these documents except for proof of sale or transfer, which you should keep for a few years in case of disputes. Next, let's talk about student loan and education-related letters. If you have federal student loans, keep all correspondence about your loans, repayment plans, and forgiveness programs for as long as the loan is active. Once your loan is paid off, keep the payoff confirmation letter permanently as proof. Now, let's look at letters about government grants or scholarships. Letters about government grants or scholarships should be kept for as long as you're receiving the funds and for several years after, in case you need to prove eligibility or resolve disputes. Once you're sure there are no outstanding issues, you can dispose of them. Next, let's discuss letters about government employment. If you work or have worked for a government agency, keep employment offer letters, contracts, and benefit statements for as long as you're employed and for several years after leaving. These documents may be needed for retirement benefits or employment verification. Now, let's talk about letters about government fines or penalties. If you receive a letter about a government fine or penalty, keep it until the issue is fully resolved and you've paid the fine. If you appeal the penalty, keep all related correspondence until the appeal process is complete. Afterward, you can dispose of the documents, but keep proof of payment for several years. Next, let's look at letters about public assistance programs. Letters about public assistance, such as Medicaid, TANF, or other welfare programs, should be kept for as long as you're receiving assistance. These documents may be needed for eligibility reviews or to resolve disputes. Once you're no longer receiving assistance and all issues are settled, you can dispose of them. Now, let's talk about letters related to voting and elections. Letters about voter registration, polling locations, or election results can usually be disposed of after the election or once you've confirmed your registration. However, if you have a dispute or need to prove your registration, keep the relevant documents until the issue is resolved. Next, let's discuss letters about government surveys or census. Government surveys and census letters can be disposed of after you've completed and submitted your response, unless you're instructed to keep them for your records. If you're selected for a follow-up or audit, keep the related documents until the process is complete. Now, let's look at letters about government-issued licenses or permits. Letters about government-issued licenses or permits, such as business licenses, driver's licenses, or building permits, should be kept for as long as the license or permit is valid. Once it expires or is replaced, you can dispose of the old documents, but keep proof of renewal or replacement for a few years. Next, let's talk about letters about government bonds or investments. If you own government bonds or other official investments, keep all related correspondence for as long as you own the investment. After you redeem or sell the investment, keep proof of the transaction for several years in case of tax or legal questions. Now, let's discuss letters about government insurance programs. Letters about government insurance, such as flood insurance or crop insurance, should be kept for as long as the policy is active and for several years after it ends. These documents may be needed for claims or to prove cover. Next, let's look at letters about government pensions or retirement benefits. If you receive government pension or retirement benefit letters, keep them for as long as you're receiving benefits. Award letters and annual statements should be kept permanently, as they may be needed for verification or to resolve disputes. Now, let's talk about letters about government contracts or grants for businesses. If your business receives government contracts or grants, keep all related correspondence, contracts, and award letters for as long as the contract is active and for several years after completion. These documents may be needed for audits or to resolve disputes. Next, let's look at letters about government regulatory compliance. Letters about regulatory compliance, such as environmental or safety inspections, should be kept for as long as you're subject to the regulation and for several years after. These documents may be needed for future inspections or legal matters. Now, let's talk about letters about government-issued identification. Letters about government-issued identification, such as passports or state IDs, should be kept for as long as the ID is valid. Once you renew or replace your ID, you can dispose of the old correspondence, but keep proof of renewal for a few years. Next, let's discuss letters about government health programs. Letters about government health programs, such as CHIP or public health insurance, should be kept for as long as you're enrolled and for several years after. These documents may be needed for eligibility, reviews, or claims. Now, let's look at letters about government disaster assistance. If you receive disaster assistance from FEMA or another agency, keep all related correspondence for as long as you're receiving assistance and for several years after. These documents may be needed for claims or to resolve disputes. Next, let's talk about letters about government, child support, or family services. Letters about child support, custody, or family services should be kept until the matter is fully resolved and for several years after. These documents may be needed for legal or financial reasons. Now, let's look at letters about government utility programs. If you participate in government utility programs, such as energy assistance, keep all related correspondence for as long as you're enrolled and for several years after. These documents may be needed for eligibility reviews or to resolve disputes. Next, let's discuss letters about government-sponsored insurance. Letters about government-sponsored insurance, such as health or auto insurance, should be kept for as long as the policy is active and for several years after it ends. These documents may be needed for claims or to prove coverage. Now, let's look at letters about government-sponsored savings programs. If you participate in government-sponsored savings programs, such as 529 college savings plans, keep all correspondence for as long as you have the account and for several years after closing it. These documents may be needed for tax or legal reasons. Next, let's talk about letters about government-sponsored loans. Letters about government-sponsored loans, such as FHA or VA loans, should be kept for as long as the loan is active and for several years after it's paid off. Keep the payoff confirmation letter permanently as proof. Now, let's look at letters about government-sponsored education programs. If you're involved in government-sponsored education programs, keep all correspondence for as long as you're enrolled and for several years after. These documents may be needed for eligibility reviews or to resolve disputes. Next, let's discuss letters about government-sponsored business programs. Letters about government-sponsored business programs, such as small business loans or grants, should be kept for as long as the program is active and for several years after completion. These documents may be needed for audits or to resolve disputes. Now, let's talk about letters about government-sponsored research programs. If you participate in government-sponsored research programs, keep all correspondence for as long as the program is active and for several years after. These documents may be needed for audits or to resolve disputes. Next, let's discuss letters about government-sponsored community programs. Letters about government-sponsored community programs, such as neighborhood grants or local improvement projects, should be kept for as long as the program is active and for several years after. These documents may be needed for audits or to resolve disputes. Now, let's look at letters about government-sponsored environmental programs. If you're involved in government-sponsored environmental programs, keep all correspondence for as long as the program is active and for several years after. These documents may be needed for audits or to resolve disputes. Next, let's talk about organizing your government letters. With so many different types of government letters, organization is key. Use labeled folders or digital storage to keep your documents sorted by category and date. Regularly review your files to remove documents you no longer need, but always double-check retention guidelines before disposing of anything. Next, let's discuss how to safely dispose of government letters. When it's time to dispose of government letters, always use a shredder or a secure document destruction service. Many government letters contain sensitive personal information that could be used for identity theft if it falls into the wrong hands. Never just throw these documents in the trash. Next, let's talk about digital copies and backups. Consider scanning important government letters and storing them securely in the cloud or on an encrypted drive. Digital copies can be a lifesaver if the originals are lost or damaged. Just make sure your digital storage is secure and regularly backed up. Now, let's summarize the key takeaways from this video. To recap, keep tax documents for at least 3 to 7 years, benefit and legal letters as long as you're involved, and citizenship or military documents permanently. Organize your files, dispose of sensitive documents securely, and consider digital backups. When in doubt, keep the letter until you're sure it's safe to let go. Let's wrap up with some final thoughts. Staying organized with your government letters can save you time, money, and stress down the road. By following these retention guidelines, you'll be prepared for audits, disputes, or any situation where you need to provide proof. Remember, when in doubt, it's better to keep a document a little longer than to throw it away too soon. Thanks for watching, and stay organized.